You can sit here if you want. Nobody else does." The small voice trembled slightly, belonging to a 4-year-old boy sitting alone on the playground bench, his knees pulled to his chest. His expensive shoes were dusty, his pressed shirt untucked, and his eyes held a sadness no child should carry. The little girl with tangled red hair and a paint-stained dress studied him for a moment, then plopped down beside him without hesitation. "I'm Meadow," she announced, swinging her legs that didn't quite reach the ground. "Why are you sitting all alone?" The boy glanced at her, surprised anyone had spoken to him. I'm Emmett. The other kids say I'm different." "Different how?" Meadow tilted her head, genuinely curious. "My daddy's really important. He's always busy. The other kids' parents told them not to play with me because my mommy died, and they don't know what to say." Meadow was quiet for a moment, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn crayon. "My daddy died too, in an accident. Mama says he's watching over us now." She held out the crayon. "Want to draw with me? Being sad is easier when you're not alone." That simple moment, one brave little girl choosing kindness over fear, was witnessed by a man standing 30 feet away, his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. Garrett, 33 years old, CEO of Garrett Technologies, watched his son interact with another child for the first time in 6 months. Since the fire that took his wife, Rebecca, Emmett had retreated into silence, and Garrett had buried himself in work, both of them drowning separately in the same ocean of grief. Every day, Garrett brought Emmett to this playground, hoping desperately that his son would connect with someone, anyone. But the other parents whispered, pulled their children away, uncomfortable with the tragedy that clung to the Garrett family like smoke. Now, watching a fearless little girl with paint on her hands offer his son a crayon, Garrett felt something crack open inside his chest, something that had been frozen since the night he lost Rebecca. "Emmett talks about colors," Meadow was saying, showing him her collection of broken crayons. "Mama says colors make the world less gray. What's your favorite?" "Blue, like the sky when it's happy." "Mine's yellow," Meadow grinned, "like sunshine. Mama says I'm her sunshine now that Daddy's gone." Across the playground, a woman approached Garrett cautiously. She wore a waitress uniform, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, exhaustion etched around her kind eyes. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Is my daughter bothering your son? I told her to give others space, but Meadow, she doesn't really understand boundaries when she sees someone sad." Garrett turned to her, his throat tight. "Bothering him? She's the first person in 6 months who's treated him like a normal child." The woman, Claire Donovan, looked at him more closely, recognition dawning. "You're Garrett Crayer. I've seen you on the news, your company, and your wife. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," managed Garrett. "Your daughter, Meadow, she's remarkable." Claire smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "She's been through a lot. Her father, Blake, died in a construction accident 2 years ago. Meadow was only 2, but somehow she remembers him. She's developed this habit of befriending anyone who looks lonely. I think it's her way of making sure no one feels as alone as we did." They stood together, 2 strangers bound by loss, watching their children draw with crayons on the wooden bench. "Emmett talks about colors," admitted Garrett quietly. "The other parents, they mean well, but they pull their kids away, like grief is contagious." Claire nodded slowly. "People don't know how to handle pain that isn't their own. It makes them uncomfortable, so they avoid it. But children haven't learned to fear sadness yet." Over the following weeks, Garrett began timing their playground visits to coincide with Meadow and Claire's. He told himself it was for Emmett, who'd started speaking again, started smiling, small victories that felt monumental. But truthfully, Claire's quiet understanding was something Garrett hadn't realized he desperately needed. One afternoon, as the children played, Claire turned to Garrett with unusual nervousness. "I need to tell you something. I didn't realize it at first, but my husband, Blake, he worked for Garrett Technologies. He was one of the electricians who Who inspected the building where your wife—" Garrett's blood ran cold. Claire's voice shook. "After the fire, there was an investigation. They found faulty wiring Blake had cleared just weeks before. He died before anyone could question him. I've carried this guilt for 2 years, wondering if my husband's mistake cost someone's life, and now I know. It cost you, your wife." The silence stretched between them, heavy and painful. Garrett's hands trembled. Everything in him wanted to rage, to blame, to finally have somewhere to direct his grief. But then he looked at Meadow, showing Emmett how to make a flower from sticks and leaves, her face so like Claire's, full of gentle determination. "Emmett talks about colors," Garrett said finally, each word carefully chosen. "Your daughter gave my son his voice back. She saw a lonely child and chose kindness. That's not the legacy of a man who cut corners or didn't care." Claire's tears spilled over. "But if Blake had caught that wiring—" If, Garrett interrupted gently. "I've drowned in those words for 6 months. What if I'd convinced Rebecca not to go to that conference? What if I'd insisted the venue be somewhere else? What if—" He stopped, steadying himself. "Your husband made a mistake, a terrible, tragic mistake. But holding on to anger won't bring Rebecca back, and it won't help our children heal." Claire stared at him, disbelieving. How can you forgive that?" "Because holding on to hate would poison the only good thing that's happened since I lost her. Watching my son learn to trust again. Because of your daughter. Because of you." Garrett's voice cracked. "You could have stayed away when you realized who I was, but you didn't." "I almost did," Claire admitted. "When I recognized you, I wanted to run. I was terrified you'd blame Meadow, blame me. But Meadow refused to leave Emmett. She said he was her friend, and friends don't leave friends." They watched their children in silence, processing the impossible tangled web of grief and grace connecting them. Months passed. The playground became sacred ground, a place where 2 broken families learned to breathe again. Garrett discovered that Claire worked double shifts at a diner, struggling with medical bills from Blake's accident. Without telling her, he anonymously paid them off through his company's charitable foundation. But Claire found out. She appeared at his office one evening, Meadow holding her hand, eyes blazing. "Why?" she demanded. "Why would you do that? After what Blake—" "Because Meadow gave Emmett something money can't buy. And because I can help, so I should. That's what Rebecca always said. Use what you have to make things better." Claire's anger dissolved into tears. "I don't know how to accept this. I don't deserve—" "Neither did I deserve your daughter's kindness," Garrett said softly. "Neither did Emmett deserve to be abandoned by every child in that playground. But Meadow sat down anyway. She chose love over fear. I'm just trying to do the same." Meadow tugged her mother's hand. "Mama, can Emmett come for dinner? We made spaghetti." The adults looked at each other, and something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that they were building something fragile but precious. "We'd love to," Garrett said. A year after that first playground meeting, Garrett stood watching Emmett and Meadow perform in their preschool play. The children who'd once avoided Emmett now included him naturally, Meadow's fearless acceptance having given them permission to do the same. Claire sat beside Garrett, their friendship now a steady presence in both their lives. They'd never discussed becoming more than friends, both still too raw, too respectful of the spouses they'd lost, but they'd become family anyway, in the way that mattered. "I need to tell you something," Claire whispered as the play began. "I found Blake's journal last week, from before the accident. He'd noted the wiring issue, had scheduled a re-inspection. He died on his way to file the report." "Then he was a good man who ran out of time," Garrett said firmly, "like Rebecca was a good woman who was in the wrong place. Some tragedies don't have villains. They're just heartbreaking." Claire gripped his hand. "Thank you for giving us grace we didn't deserve. Thank you for giving us your daughter's courage."
On stage, Meadow and Emmett stood hand in hand, reciting their lines about friendship. When Emmett stumbled on a word, Meadow whispered it to him, just loud enough for the audience to hear. Laughter rippled through the room, not mocking, but warm. After the play, Emmett ran to Garrett, his face glowing. "Did you see, Daddy? I remembered almost all my words." "You were perfect, buddy." Meadow bounded over, grabbing Emmett's hand. "We were both perfect because we did it together." Claire knelt beside her daughter. "You know what you taught everyone, sweetheart? That being brave sometimes just means sitting next to someone who's alone." Meadow considered this seriously, then looked at Emmett. "You're not alone anymore, right?" "Right," Emmett smiled, "because you sat next to me." That evening, as they shared pizza in Garrett's home, something that had become their Friday tradition, Emmett asked a question that stopped everyone. "Daddy, why did Mama have to die?" The room fell silent. Garrett looked at Claire, who gave him an encouraging nod. "I don't know, son. Sometimes sad things happen and we don't get to know why." He pulled Emmett close. "But I know your mama would love that you found a friend like Meadow. She always believed kindness was the most important thing." "My daddy believed that too," Meadow added quietly. "Mama says he helped people build houses so they'd have homes." "He did. He wanted everyone to feel safe." The children digested this. Then Meadow brightened. "So our parents were both kind. That means we have to be kind too, right? To make them proud?" "Right," Emmett agreed solemnly. Garrett and Claire exchanged looks, both marveling at the simple wisdom of children. Later, after Meadow and Claire left, Garrett tucked Emmett into bed. His son looked up at him with Rebecca's eyes. "Daddy, is it okay to be happy again, even though Mama's gone?" Garrett's heart broke and mended simultaneously. "Yes, buddy. Being happy doesn't mean forgetting. It means living the way Mama would want us to, with open hearts." "Like Meadow? She has an open heart." "Exactly like Meadow." Emmett yawned, then whispered, "I'm glad she sat next to me. I was so lonely before." "Me too, son. Me too." 2 years after that first playground meeting, Garrett stood in that same spot, watching Meadow and Emmett, now 6 years old, welcoming a new child to the playground, a shy boy whose family had just moved to town, standing alone by the swings. Without hesitation, Meadow marched over. "Hi, I'm Meadow, and this is Emmett. Want to play with us?" The boy nodded shyly, and just like that, kindness rippled forward. Claire appeared beside Garrett, her presence now as natural as breathing. "She's teaching him well." "They're teaching each other," Garrett corrected, "teaching all of us." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the children create a world where loneliness had no place, all because one brave little girl had chosen to sit beside one lonely little boy. "You know what I learned from them?" Garrett said softly. "That courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing connection despite it. Meadow was scared too that first day, she told me later, but she sat down anyway." "And changed everything," Claire finished. "Everything." As the sun set over the playground, casting golden light over children who learned that kindness costs nothing but gives everything, Garrett felt Rebecca's presence, not as grief, but as gratitude. She'd have loved Meadow's fierce heart. She'd have loved how their son had learned to love again. "Thank you," he whispered to the sky, to Rebecca, to Blake, to the universe that had somehow turned tragedy into grace. Beside him, Claire whispered the same words. And on the playground, Meadow's laughter rang out, bright and brave and boundlessly kind, a sound that promised better tomorrows. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is offer our presence to someone in pain. A child understood this instinctively, sitting beside a lonely boy when others walked away. That simple act of courage, choosing connection over comfort, transformed not just two children, but two families learning to heal. Kindness doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes it just requires sitting down beside someone and saying, "You're not alone." In a world that often teaches us to avoid discomfort, may we all have the courage of a 4-year-old girl who saw sadness and chose to stay. Because the bravest hearts are often the smallest ones, the ones who haven't yet learned that love is risky, so they give it freely. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.